Welcome to Pentecostal Preaching Channel. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what you see. Hit the bell to be notified when something new is uploaded. Have a great day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another edition of Inland Lighthouse Church podcast. And I'll be your host today, Bob Lee. And with me today, I have my technical sound engineer, Danny Tirado.
Hello, everyone.
And we got a very special guest. Previously on a podcast, we heard from missionary Robert Traylor, missionary to Russia. And today, we're privileged to have his wife with us today. Sister Traylor, why don't you go and say hello?
Hello, everybody. Such a pleasure to be here in Rialto again. So everyone been very nice, hospitable, and we are enjoying our stay. We appreciate everything you do for us here.
Well, we appreciate everything you're doing for all of us and around the world, and we really, you're doing a great job. And we're excited to have you here today in the studio, and we want to thank all of our listeners for joining in today. This is actually going to be a two-part podcast where we're going to kind of focus on Russia and Sister Traylor. And then she's going to actually, in part two, we're going to continue with a discussion on raising kids and some advice for mothers and raising kids in this generation, which is obviously very different from the generation I grew up. So we're going to go ahead and start today. And we're going to just ask you, Sister Traylor, we thank you for being here. And why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit about your church background, how you got in church, especially Apostolic Church.
Mm-hmm. First time I met Apostolic preacher in St. Petersburg, Russia. He was a missionary from United States. They posted in a newspaper advertisement about Bible in English. And I was interested in both, so I came and met the pastor. We had a discussion about it, and he later on informed me that they're going to have Bible study in Book of Romans and the Book of Acts for a fall semester. So I enrolled in the Bible study and was coming faithfully every Wednesday night. So by the time the semester was over, God showed to me the revelation of Acts 2:38, and it kind of like the light was turned on for me, because I read my Bible through and through for several years. I was seeking God, but I never seen the truth until the missionary preached it to me. And I was baptized in Jesus' name 2001, December 21st. So that's my day.
Okay.
And then a year later, I got the Holy Ghost, 2002.
Okay, so prior to 2001 and as missionary, had you had any church background, any denomination? I'm not sure what they have in Russia. Probably not a lot of churches, but I don't know.
Yeah. My parents baptized me in Orthodox religion when I was 16 years old, and but it was kind of against my will. This is something at the time that all Russians were doing. Everybody got baptized in Orthodox. But I couldn't really understand completely what's going on with that religion. I couldn't blend in. It was something just wasn't sticking with me. And 1997, sorry. I went to United States as an exchange student, and I was staying in the family, and happened to be a Baptist family. And they were extremely kind and showed a lot of respect and kindness and love toward me. And I was very impressed with their character, I would say. So, and at the end of my stay, the mother of the family, she told me about Jesus, and she gave me the Bible in Russian language. And when I got back to Russia, I had the Bible with me, and I just was reading it.
Oh,
and as I was reading Old Testament, New Testament, God starts revealing to me about idol worship and not setting the idols before you and images before you. So then God gave me a revelation that Orthodox religion was not in the will of God, and it was actually he was very displeased and disgusted with what they're doing. And so I left Orthodox Church, and I was just there reading the Word of God and studying more about the life of Jesus, and eventually came across the missionaries.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank God for missionaries.
Yes.
And that tells us right there we have a need to get missionaries all over the world to get this truth out.
Absolutely. And I don't know where would I be today if not for missionary.
That's great. Well, I think I hear a touch of an Arkansas accent in your voice, and I'm just kind of curious. Where'd you pick that up at? And no, I'm just teasing. But so your husband, obviously, on our other podcast, and we know him. He came from Arkansas. So why don't you tell us a little bit how you guys got together?
Yes, my knight on the white horse came from Arkansas, obviously. What happened is I was 3 years in church, and pastor's family had a death in their family in America, and they had to leave Russia for a period of time. So they were looking for somebody to replace them while they were gone. And it was a while till they found someone, and it happened to be Brother Traylor's mom and dad, and they were not planning coming to Russia. They were not prepared. It was very spontaneous for them, and I give them honor for their willingness to go through the open doors. And they came. So Pastor, he gave me $100 a month, and he said, "Take care of this missionary family." So I was delighted to do it, and of course they couldn't speak the language. They didn't know where the post office is in the grocery store, and they completely relied on my help. And I was there for them for 4 months. We got to know each other very well, and but at some point things started progressing into certain direction, and God was dealing with me about certain things in the ministry. Brother Traylor taught me a lot about ministry. And eventually, one day when I was visiting with them, their son called the house, and I answered the phone. So Brother Robert Traylor was on the other side. So that's how it started, and we communicated over the phone, the letters, for a while, until we realized that very possible is God's will. So we decided to move forward with it and see if God opens the doors. And he started opening door after door after door very quickly. It was obviously God's will. So, and being honest with you, we needed each other at the time. So he had broken family, and I was alone fighting my giants. So when God put us together, it brought a lot of peace into our life in terms of quieted a lot of struggle. We didn't plan on it, but he had to stay in Russia longer than 3 months. We ended up staying a year and a half. And being in the church and got in closer relationship with the local missionary there, UPCI missionary. I think God used that time to really plant a burden in Brother Traylor's heart about Russian field. And when we got back to America, we were not planning on being back in Russia. We're building our life in Arkansas. But God had a different view at things, and we wanted to follow our flesh and be comfortable and raise our family. But he had a different plan.
Well, that's exciting.
And here we're today. So,
well, now, how many? I think your husband told us, but there aren't many apostolic Pentecostal churches in Russia, are they? And actually, you guys are like the first or official one anyway, maybe.
At the moment, we probably the only church because the first two churches that were planning in St. Petersburg was LAGC and UPC Church. There were two missionaries in the field, and that's who was my pastor, and then close friends to us. But over time, persecution came, and some of the missionaries left, and UPCI Church was closed the doors on it. I know LAGC minister is still there, but he's not within our reach. But we consider ourselves the only church because there's no other fellowship that is willing to fellowship.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's kind of. I mean, Russia's a big place. Landmass, I think it's like twice the size of United States. I'm not really sure. I'm not a geographer, but anyway, that's a great work you guys are doing, and we're going to talk about that later about possibly how people can support you. We'll get into that later. Well, so you said you came over to the United States as an exchange student. I assume, did you know much English before that, or had you learned it in school over there?
Well, when I first came to the United States, I knew English, but I couldn't speak it very well. So for me, just to go by myself was a big step.
Wow.
So, and while I was living with the family, they were continually having conversations with me and knew that I needed to apply my knowledge into practice and start talking. So by the end of my stay, I broke that barrier and I started speaking English. And since then, it's just was going up and and growing continually. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's how it happened.
How about describing maybe some cultural differences that you had? Because obviously you're from Russia, but you lived in several years. How many years did you live in the States, you said?
I've traveled in the States even before I met Brother Traylor. But then after we got married, we lived in America for about 4 years together. Yeah.
So what are some of the big differences, or are people the same everywhere, or what are some of the big contrasts you've noticed?
When I first met American people, I was impressed with their smile, the number one that got my attention to this nation. And I really fell in love with American people because they seem to be more fun, and they were smiling, and they would like to have a good time. They're not closed within themselves. They're a very open nation. Very opposite to the Russian culture. We are closed, and it's the history itself. Our destiny of Russia just closed us within the borders. It's more like contained within itself.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other foot, I see the other side of things, and I think Russian people are more direct, and you may notice it today during the interview. I may say some things very direct, point blank, and that's another reason why Brother Traylor blended in really well in Russia, because he already had it in his character. But American people, they like to get things smoothly done without any edges, and this is just different point of view of things, and we like to make it straight and to the point, and American people, it looks a little bit smoother and better and more peaceful and joyful, Either way is fine with me. I love both of them. So I see today the tendency in Russia going through the conservative style or very conservative and classical style toward the more modern and open direction, because a lot of Russian people looking at America as an example. So new generation in Russia, they smile more, they're more open to the foreigners, they're open to travel in the world. A lot of them continually go outside the borders looking different directions, just experiencing the world. So there's a big change happening in Russia right now, and in moods of the people, it's not hostile toward anybody. They do realize through the internet as well that a lot of the difference we thought we had is more political than personal. You know, so.
Now, I don't want to. I know your husband wants to talk all day about politics. I'm just teasing. He actually doesn't, and I don't blame him. But it just curious. One minor question: do in the United States you have what are called like conservative people? Like I guess we would be considered conservative in our behaviors or whatever. Then there's liberal, like it tends to be Republican, more conservative, Democrat. I'm just curious. Do they have the same type of conservatives and liberals that are in Russia, or is it?
Well, since the Iron Curtain fell, we had influence of democracy in Russia. Obviously, it's not the same. We are not 100% democracy like it is we know in the United States of America, but we had effects of democracy and free market in Russia. So it's a mix of things. Older generation tend to hold on to the more conservative principles. Younger generation, there is influence of liberal, a lot of liberal state. So it could be a division between the two, but I think our President Putin, he's handling it very well in terms of keeping the balance. He's not cutting off the older generation, that they have the right to believe what they believe. And he's not cutting off the younger generation because they have the right to be free and do. So I think at this point he's holding a good balance right now. Right now. Okay. Yes. So.
Are things like social media gaining popularity in Russia?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure it's not the extent of people spend. I don't know. Our pastor talked on social media recently, and I think he said something like 9 hours, Danny? Kids,
something like that.
9 hours a day kids are spent on technology, and I doubt that it happens that much in Russia or spend that many hours, but maybe. Do they?
Yes.
Are the kids really?
Yes, it's very strong in Russia, and I don't know if comparison to America, how would it be, but there was research made just recently, and they were asking people question, what would you give up, rather give up, let's say, your marriage or social media internet? You'd be surprised.
Oh,
wow.
Seriously, there is a good percentage that said, I'll stick with the internet.
That's wild.
Yeah, it takes a strong hold. And I will talk about it a little bit later in area of kids and stuff.
Well, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, others talk about other studies. I know. I think it was Berkeley did a study where they took like 1,000 students, and they all volunteered, and they were going to lay off all technology, phones and stuff for one day, just 24 hours, and they all committed to it. Everybody. They said they were negatively affected. It bothered them. Some of them it bothered them so much they ended up having to go to like the hospital because they're going through like tech withdrawals or something.
Yes.
It was unbelievable just for 24 hours. They felt it's called some kind of like disconnected syndrome or something like that. The feeling of being left out, and it was just amazing how crazy it is and addictive it can be.
Right before I came here. A day before, I was in prayer, and God laid the burden on my heart for young people, especially in church, specifically. And I'm going to be talking about it. I feel God led me into that direction. So, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about your kids later. I did have a question here. I was going to ask if they're bilingual, but we'll get on to maybe on part two. Let's skip on down here. I have a question. So we're going to have, this is going to be a fun one here. So your husband, before he left here, I remember he put on a couple breakfasts for the church, and I think even our pastor talked about fellowship and breaking of bread, and it's a great way to just get people in. Say, hey, we're having a breakfast at church. Invite people and over and whatever. And he definitely cooked up a bunch of things. My wife taught here at the school, and while you guys are staying here, and he was often cooking. So I'm just curious, what kind of Russian dishes does he have? Is there anything that you'd like to tell us about? Any secret recipes you want to divulge or anything, or is he cooking up venison and possum and stuff like he's used to in Arkansas? What's he doing over there in Russia?
I think he mixed his culture with the Russian culture. There is dishes that he loves in Russia, and certainly he prefers cooking them in Russia because food is different. You know, you can't get some stuff here what you can get in Russia, and vice versa. So we don't have deer meat in Russia. They should, though. It's so good. Deer steak is not possible, but we do cook pork and on occasion some beef, and chicken is more often as well. But some of his favorite dishes that he can cook is borscht, which one of my favorites, and he can cook some things like pelmeni, or he was talking about it the other day. He can even cook the bread. And figure out the recipe of biscuits in Russia as well. The flour is different. A lot of things are different, but he's trying different things and figuring out the recipes. And a lot of times when visitors come, he can cook either American or Russian food. It's kind of both.
I think I remember him saying something about a lot of the, I don't want to call them new converts, but people you're trying to win, some souls. Did you use meals and things like that to try to just, hey, come on over for a meal, and not really push the Bible on them so much? Or how did that work? Or
Well, at some point we had cooking classes.
Okay.
Yes, and he would take a recipe, he would search and find something unique, like sushi towers. It's like, wow, what is it? Sushi tower. So it would bring attention of everyone, and he would learn the recipe, and he could perform it in front of the people and let them try, and it would catch their attention, something different. He would always get recipes that are outside the Russian tradition, so it will catch young people's attention because they are curious, they want to learn. And that's how we met a lot of people, through cooking, and not necessarily with Russian recipes, but everyone in Russia interested in hamburgers and steaks and all kinds of stuff. So Russian people are not scared to try.
Okay.
If they meet American, they want to try something American. If they meet Italian, they're ready to try something from Italy, something unique. So, but he does like my cooking, my Russian cooking as well.
Okay.
So that's,
I have a little story. When I was deployed to Kosovo, we were kind of with like a multinational kind of unit, and we had Ukrainians with us, and I want to say it was like during the springtime, and we decided to have a barbecue outside our barracks, and their barracks were like right next to ours, and so they came over and they're like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "We're barbecuing," like, it's like, "Can we try some?" We're like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And man, they fell in love with it. They were like, "We don't do this stuff over there," and it's like, "Oh, well, we do it almost, every weekend." So yeah, that was just kind of a neat little thing that people like to try.
Yeah. It opens the doors when you feed people. You break bread with them, like Pastor Joel Booker was talking about. Even if it's a cracker, you break the cracker, and That's whatever you have, you just bring it to the table. Even if it's just hot dog on a bun, they're fine with it. They're not picky.
Well, we've
Yeah.
done some similar things with Sunday school, and you
Yeah.
mentioned hot dogs in a bun, just going out to the neighborhood and just throwing a barbecue up real quick and just say, hey, free hot dogs, and it gathers a crowd, and it's simple, it's easy, and I guess
Now, in Russia, it's hard to do something like this because parents teaching their kids not to take candy from the strangers, not to let them seduce by the food, and it's very. If they come to your house and eat, it's a certain level of trust that they have for you, but they're very careful.
Yeah. Well, going back to, you kind of remind me of another question. Brother Traylor did mention the cultural differences here in the United States. He talked a little bit about people, I don't know if overstaying your welcome is the right way to put it, but you got people that come just kind of show up at your house. Hey, what are you doing? And but he said they just don't do that in the Russian culture. You got to be invited, and then they come. They do, like you said, maybe because they're more direct. They get their business done, and okay, we done, and they're out of there. So that, I guess, just trying to build those relationships is something that's. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see, like you said, the younger generation, if they tend to be a little different, and again, maybe they're exposed to social media more, and just all around the world and cultures that they're a little different. I don't know.
Yes, certainly. In Russian culture, if you take advantage of somebody's hospitality, it's like you're taking chances. They won't ask you to come again.
Yeah.
So if you want them to ask you to come again, you be nice.
Yeah. That's some good advice right there.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Okay. So when we had your husband on recently, he talked about how you guys got the property, and it was an incredible story. So we're just curious if you want to talk about that, or maybe some other experiences that you've had that you just are burning inside you to get out there. Just some neat things. I know there's several probably, but maybe you can touch on a couple.
yes, the property that God let us obtain was given for our home. So we built the house, and now we're facing the stage where we have to be looking for the church property. And at this point, the property that was available next door to us is no longer available, and we looking elsewhere, some other locations that we possibly can obtain. So looking up to God, as I told my husband this morning, if God was asking my opinion about it, I would rather Russian people invest in the house of God and make it happen, because the blessing that's gonna come with it is tremendous. I want my people blessed. Now, if American church feel the burden to give and help us, continue helping us like they have been, they're going to be continually blessed, and there's no doubt about that. But I would like to see Russian people get hungry enough to give up their substance toward God, and to see that it's important. It is important to see the truth and how it's going to bless their life. It's like amazing. But now, what God chooses to do, it's up to Him.
Yeah.
So we're open for whatever direction He's going to take us. So we'll see what happens with the property next door, because our neighbor who was contending for it, he got his property located on our borders, and at this point, he's got 10 measures of land, and just recently government put in a new law that was stating you have to have at least 12 to build a house. So he got what he wanted, but he can't build on it. So he thought he won the battle, but he actually lost.
Wow.
So at this point, the available land is connected to us and to him, and the government is not willing to give any of it to anyone because of the conflict that took place. And he's just sitting there, and they're saying they're going to do the play park, which is fine with us. But if they don't, it's just going to stay there like it is. So, and we're just waiting to see what he's going to do next.
Okay.
So, we thought we lost, but God never loses.
That's right.
He never does. It's amazing.
Oh, he's a great God.
Yeah, He is, truly.
So are there what about people you've met? Any neat relationships you've built? Now, you're in St. Petersburg.
Mm-hmm.
Where was your family from? Are you from that actual city or somewhere else in Russia?
I was born down south of Russia. It's on the Black Sea coastal line. So that's my homeland. And my aunt actually lived in St. Petersburg all her life. When I turned 17, I moved to St. Petersburg closer to her because I got enrolled in college. So I went to college in St. Petersburg for 5 years. So my parents, they got me an apartment there, and it became my home. So I consider St. Petersburg my home. Most of my adult life I spent in St. Petersburg, so I'm very comfortable there.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like home there.
And I assume we talked a little bit about the 2019 conference that's coming up. Do you have a place for that yet, where it's going to be held, or are you still kind of figuring all the details out?
We worked on conference 2018 and developed a good connection with a manager of a Radisson hotel in St. Petersburg. He was an American. His name is David. He was extremely helpful to get the conference set up and run smoothly. So next year, we're going to do the same thing.
Okay.
We're going to be in the same hotel. Hopefully there'll be more people, maybe bigger room. But David was extremely polite and very respectful toward our faith, toward our brother Traylor. And I'm just looking forward that he'll get blessed too. Most of the details already worked out. It's already the ground been broke with it. Foundation set for the conference.
Okay.
Now we just have to do the final details on it. So shouldn't be any problem.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to we'll do what we can to advertise for it. And I think because already when he brought it up recently, I remember our pastor had already talked about it once earlier in the year, and I'd forgotten about it until we had our podcast with your husband recently.
2019 conference will be the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of May.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
we'll have to keep that in mind.
Yes.
I'd like to
put
try
it
to
on
come.
your schedule.
I've talked to my wife. We'd like to come. So we're gonna try our
Well,
best.
it was neat because I was, working on the details with Brother Traylor, and because I'm the one that's speaking the language and making the most phone calls for getting things done. It's amazing how God was orchestrating things, and even we could feel that He was doing it in some areas. And there was a interesting situation I was facing with a bus. I had to set up a bus for the group because after every service we would put people on a bus and just let them tour the city and go to the museums. We have a program. So I had to find the right bus for the right price. It took me literally 3 weeks. You would think it's easy to find. Just call the company. Here it is, But every time there was something wrong with it. Every time I called a certain company, there was something not right. And eventually I found one, and things working out. The agreement was right. The price was right. The bus was right. But the lady's attitude was so bad. I was like, well, it's been 3 weeks. I got to make a decision where I'm going with it. And I got through talking to her on the phone and turned the phone off. And I'm thinking, God, And all of a sudden, I felt God told me, he said, you think you're going to put my people in these kind of hands? Do you think it would be a good thing? I said, no, Lord. I don't want any kind of bad attitude experience for our guests. So this week, my husband was teaching English class in one of our connecting points. And the hostess of the English classes, she came to us and we started talking about things about the conference. And she's actually a tour guide to museums and stuff in English and German. So we invited her to give a tour to our group in the Hermitage. And then she mentioned about the bus. She said, what else you need? What kind of help I can do for you? And I said, well, I can't get the bus, going for a group. She said, you know what? I have connections. She said, I have a really good guy, a friend of mine. He may cut you a good deal. And I said, sure. And we made a couple of phone calls, and the guys were fine. It went perfect. The price was right. The attitude was right. Everything went smooth. So God's hand was in it. I'm thankful. I don't think I could do it myself. Certainly not.
Well, I got to tell you, I had a work conference one year, several years ago, and I was in charge of getting a bus for the QA managers, about 50, 60 people, to get people to we were going to go out to Palm Springs, ride the tram or something. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, it was a nightmare. That was my one job. And and I didn't like it. It was tough to find people, get the right price, like you said, and make sure that they were going to be there on time, and making sure the bus was going to stay the driver, and not, it's not easy. So I can imagine the whole conference and getting everything, the food and just all the details and everything. We just pray that it all goes well and smoothly for you. And it's going to be exciting.
Is it tough for churches to put things on like that, like government-wise? Is it, I don't want to say crackdown, but do they kind of say, well, you got to do a lot of things to get it going, or was it pretty easy?
Well, this conference was specifically and single for American people. Russian people were not invited to the conference, and simply because it was taking place in the hotel, and hotel conference rooms are not dedicated to the religious purposes. So for us to have a conference with the Russian people coming, we'll have to have our own location registered with the government under religious purposes. Place of worship has to be registered. So next year conference, if God doesn't move quickly to get us a location for the church, then we'll be doing it again, and it's just going to be American people coming from different churches. And we had a good time in prayer, and it was a very anointed time of preaching, and we had fivefold ministry there. We had evangelists, we had pastors, we had prophets, we had intercessors, we had singers, we had full complete ministry there, and that was amazing. And almost seems like every other person who was there playing piano, and we had a piano marathon, so to speak. In one of the restaurants, they had a grand piano in the middle, and one would sit down and play something gospel music, and then the next, and we had, I don't know how many people that would just sit down and play, and it was a beautiful time in the Lord. It really was.
Kind of along those same lines, then I was kind of curious. Here, when we go out, whether it be for Sunday school or just general outreach, we take either church cards, flyers, and things like that to let them know, hey, come visit us at Inland Lighthouse or at the corner of Cactus and Bloomington. Can you guys even do stuff like that in Russia? Religious about your church flyers. Can you guys do that kind of stuff?
No, Russian people, yes. But if this is American people coming in to advertise their faith, you have to have special visa for it. You have to have religious visa registered on a certain church. Then you can do it. But if you come in as a tourist and you're just participating in a worship, it's different. But you're not allowed to advertise your faith as a tourist. So you there are some reasons.
Very different.
Yeah, but you can have your services in a hotel because it's part of your. It's part of your faith. You know, people come from all over the world. They gotta have their service. You know, they're kind of like prayer rooms in airports. Everybody goes there and prays. So same thing, kind of. You can do it. Yeah, you can. You have right. So.
Well, how about, why don't we, is there anything, any specific needs? I mean, I'm sure a missionary, you got tons of them. Is there anything we can do? We can pray for you, but is there how else can us here at Inland Lighthouse or any of our listeners out there help the Traylors in Russia?
Well, certainly, Inland Lighthouse and Rialto have been probably one of our greatest supporters, but for one of the single reasons we kind of part of this church. Bishop Booker is our pastor, and he's been helping like no other before. So, and I know he's extremely busy, and we don't get to see or hear from him very much, but still we know he's praying for us every day. We're in his prayers. That's number one, the prayer. And number two, of course, financial support, and it's been taking place and regularly. We're thankful to every church, and they've been faithful. This trip, I know my husband has certain financial goals he has to reach. I think he said $25,000 he wants to raise our budget because our budget is kind of stays on the minimum what we can do. So for us to go forward with the church building, and it's going to take its extra expense. You know, when you're going forward, it always takes extra mile. So he tries to boost our budget so we're not so cramped, and bound by our financial burdens. So we're praying and hoping God's going to propel that forward for us. But one more thing that I would like to focus is just small groups of people that have a burden for foreign missions that pray for Russia and could just get a small group, like 3-5 people, and just to come and visit. We have 1 month visa, tourist visa, for American citizen to come, and there could be a lot done in 1 month. Not just being there, praying, and part of the worship, and being enthused about God and Word of God and worship, and kind of encourage us, our kids, and going forward with that. But also, we see that God leads our visitors towards souls as well. 2 years ago, we had 3 young people coming, one from North Little Rock, one from Michigan, and one from Beebe, Arkansas. So, and 3 of them came together and stayed a month. And while we were serving the Lord and excuse me, going seeing the sights and getting to know the Russian culture and language, we met a young lady on the train, and she was just smiling toward us. So we swapped the phone numbers, and she could speak English. They swapped phone numbers and got connected. And now today she's got her whole family with us, and actually they're staying in our home today just to make sure everything goes smooth while we're gone. Wow. And they've been a great blessing and very sincere young couple. They have a little boy, 3-year-old, and so soul. Even if you win one soul, even if you meet one person, it's worth it. Plus, you get a great trip. Yeah. I believe young people experiencing Russia, we have so much history, such a big blessing of just being in the middle of historic place and opens mentality, opens the mind of young people to see the world. It's going to benefit them in the long run. So it kind of the blessing goes both ways. And so after the conference in this year, our youngest daughter, Diana, received the Holy Ghost. So
wow, that's exciting.
It was kind of like a reward. After everybody left, the first service we had, she just came forward and she got it. And God poured that reward for us and for doing things and trying to stay faithful in what we're doing.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's great seeing your kids and my grandkids getting the Holy Ghost. There's probably nothing better. Well, Sister Traylor, we're going to go ahead and end part 1 here of this podcast. I want to thank you. Any final words you want to say? You probably talked more right now than you have in a long time.
Well, I was just going to say that we love Rialto, and we have a special spot in our heart for young people here. We have a beautiful youth group and beautiful leading family there. And you all guys continue in our prayer. And it's sincere. It's not just one-time thing. And we hope to see Rialto be more involved in Russian missions. Really, we have a great desire for that to happen.
Well, I think that's God's will as well. So, again, we thank you for spending time with us today. And Danny, why don't you go and close it out, and we'll end this first part of the podcast.
All right. For those of you who would like to leave any comments, questions, or anything like that, you can reach us at podcast@inlandlighthouse.com. Once again, that's podcast@inlandlighthouse.com. And we will see you guys on the next podcast.